Okay, where every day everything to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make some or hopefully a lot of money on the internet. Loaded up for discussion today. We have the majors dropping on the Iran attack on Israel. Majors are down, Bitcoin down 3%, ETH down 6%, Sol down 5%. We'll get into that in a little bit. Bitwise files for an XRP ETF, the seventh largest crypto by market cap. And finally, Fantasy Top launches presidential tactics. Players can score points based on politicians' social engagement. Very interesting development. We've also got the latest on price action on crypto and NFTs and a discussion on betting ethics as Polymarket removes Hezbollah section after a tweet by none other than our very own Legendary. So before we do that, we're ready to get into it. We've got Legendary, Sam, and Brett in the co-host seats. Got a full house today. But before we get there, just a reminder, friends, that nothing that we say here is financial advice. This market is very, very risky, as we are literally experiencing as we talk. We don't know anything for sure, so please proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Legendary, it is Wednesday. It is the 2nd of October. How are you doing?
GM, doing pretty well. It seems like October has been canceled for the moment, but it's still only the second day in October, so there's still enough time to remain bullish and not start to worry, not just yet at least.
For sure. It's funny that October lasted for one day. I find that very, very entertaining. Sammy, how are you doing? You're back from your break, ready to join us in October. How are you feeling?
I'm good. It's nice to be back, refreshed, raring to go. I think the whole October thing, maybe counter trading the timeline would have been the right move. But yeah, it's unfortunate about the stuff that's going on outside of crypto. Hopefully things resume to the good side, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we will see indeed. Legendary, how else are things sitting with you? Had a great show yesterday. I've been thinking about it a little bit. We had DK on the show, our first kind of guest artist on the show as part of our partnership with Shape. I was very, very excited about that. I think it went very, very nicely. How have you been kind of reflecting on that?
Yeah, I think it was a good interview. I was thinking before, when we were still discussing the partnership, if how that will fit with our audience, how to structure the show around that, given that it is a 15 to 20-minute segment, and how we can make everything fit that we still are able to cover all of the news, the price action, the NFT action, everything that is important, the Web3 Roundup. And I'm glad that we found a nice way to basically compress the show to the first half of the show, deliver that as usual, and then have the interview section added basically to around the second half of the show. And I think that worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked it a lot. One of the things that was pretty fun to see was as DK was talking, as we got to the kind of details in terms of the drop that he's doing, it's called Deeple. The energy coming out of the YouTube comments was pretty strong yesterday. People were demanding the whitelist, which in effect was a net good thing, because though we did not have any whitelists yesterday, we do have some whitelists today. We've got one whitelist to give away to one of our YouTube subscribers, and we're going to do that during the process of today's show. I don't know whether we'll get to announce it at the very end. We're trying to figure out how we'll do it, but at a minimum, this is what you have to do. We'll do a couple more reminders as we go through the show, but you'll just need to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can go to the comment section once you've subscribed, and then just leave a comment with your Twitter handle. That's all you need to do. Leave your Twitter handle in the YouTube comments to this show, which you can watch on YouTube. And you can do that by going to the Modern Market account and simply going to the YouTube channel there. So that's how we're going to do it. We'll do a couple more reminders. We'll either announce it at the very end of the show, or we'll announce it after the show once we've had a time to process. Obviously, it's very hard to do all this stuff perfectly live, so we'll do a little bit of both. We'll try to figure it out as we go. But very delighted to say that. Shout out to the YouTube commenters who I think got you a whitelist opportunity. So shout out to them. Look, let's get into the price action and the headlines as usual, because we're going to run the usual show and get into the price action headlines. So starting with Bitcoin and ETH, we've got Bitcoin down almost 5% at 60.9K. We've got ETH down another 7% to 2.4K, and Solana down also 7% at around $145. In terms of the headlines themselves, we have obviously the majors dropping on the Iran attack on Israel. Unchained Pod reported that the Bitcoins dropped below 61K triggered more than $500 million worth of liquidations over the last 24 hours. So that's important to note. We've also got Bitwise filing for the XRP ETF. XRP is the 7th largest crypto by market cap. Decrypt Media reported, or Nate Garachi reported, that Bitwise positioning to file for XRP is highly noteworthy. In the short term, this is likely call option on the November election, but Bitwise is highly credible crypto native fund firm that doesn't just throw stuff at a wall that's simply not in their NDA. So DNA, sorry, not in an NDA. This is strategic in their opinion. So we'll touch on that a little bit. Sammy's going to do a bit of a breakdown there. And then finally, Fancy Top launches presidential tactics game, players scoring points based on politicians' social engagement. Those are your headlines today. We're going to dive into those in more detail in just a little bit. A few notable sales from around the space. We had a Deeple Politics is Bullshit edition selling for 50 ETH, a Bong Bear selling for 69 ETH. There were all kinds of NFT activity in the Bearer chain ecosystem. In fact, specifically, NFT Stats reported that the Bearer chain NFT ecosystem did over 200 ETH of volume yesterday after weeks of no trade. Not only did a Bong Bear sell for 69 ETH, 2 Bond Bears sold for 32.5 ETH and 35 ETH as well. So a lot of activity going on there. And that is the price action in the headlines. Legendary, let's head over to our NFT marketplace partner, Mintify, see what's going on that side.
Absolutely. Let's take a look how the JPEG market has been reacting to the last 24 hours. Bored Apes are actually up 1%, 10.76 ETH floor for them. Pudgies are down 8%, sitting at a 10.15 ETH floor. Azuki's very similar price action there. They're down 1.5%, sitting at a 5.25 ETH floor. And also wanted to take a look at the ordinal side of things. Ordinals did experience a bit of a comeback the last week, and wanted to see how this, or maybe 2 weeks ago, how this played out yesterday, how this played out over the last 2 weeks. Just taking a look at 2 collections there on Mintify. One of them being the Puppets. Puppets are down 2% at a 0.11 BTC floor. Over the last 24 hours, are down 6% over the last 7 days. If we go back even a bit further and look at the 30-day price action, it's still massively positive. It's still up 44%. And we see a very similar picture for Node Monks. They are down way more over the last 24 hours, though. They're down 9% at a 0.17 BTC floor, down 18% over the last 7 days. And over the last 30 days, nonetheless, they are up equally 46%. So still a positive momentum over the last month, but a good amount of that has corrected down over the last day and the last week.
Love it. Great to check in on the ordinal side. Obviously, there's been a huge move on the
whatever.
Oh, Brett just chiming in there, having a few technical issues. I think that's the typhoon in Taiwan, causing a few technical issues there. Yeah, very good, very important to check in on the ordinal side. A huge run up in the last few weeks. Maybe a little bit of correction here. On the ETH side, though, Legendary, there hasn't been that much of a correction, right? I know the market's kind of selling off a little bit here, and we'll touch on why that is when it comes to the majors. But on the ETH side, things are fairly stable. Like Pudgy Penguins is an absolute rock, for example, above 10 ETH. Noticing anything else on that side?
It's in the majors, it's pretty stable. Collections like Egg that we haven't touched on in a while is down another 13%. Cubs from the yoga pets ecosystem are down another 20%. But basically, the majors are doing well, and there's not a lot of movement in the other things. It's a bit of trading going on. I observed on the gaming side that the Pirates, the founder Pirates in Pirate Nation, they have been up and down 10% on one day, followed by a correction the day after. But it doesn't seem to be like a strong correction going on at all.
Fair enough. Okay, that's pretty interesting to see. Sammy, what about you? How are things on your side? Like anything that's catching your attention, whether it's to do with the NFT market or otherwise? What are you thinking about at the moment?
Well, I think on the NFT side, I don't know if you can hear me clearer now because my mic is a bit iffy, but I think on the NFT side, I'm kind of looking towards abstract bearer chain. So obviously the Bong Bears and the Pudgies, I think those two could be potential catalysts coming into kind of hype around those two projects as they go live. Now, I don't know when the bearer chain stuff, I think that's later on, but at least they've got that second testnet up and activities happening. I do think that the gaming stuff I find quite interesting that Legendary was talking about. You've got the Cambria Founders Pass. They've recently moved to Ronin, so they'll be going multi-chain. You've got the on the grids Xbox integration, so that's kind of coming to market as well. So that to me, when you've got like a pretty anti-Web3 sentiment from the gaming community, if you've then got that integrated into like one of these main consoles, then all of a sudden there could be a slow kind of transition to gaming stuff. So I've got my eyes on that. I do think there will be a gaming bull run, and it does make sense that those assets will, if there's a fun game, then they could eventually take off. So I think just in terms of themes, just looking at the gaming side, obviously with that Xbox integration, and then also the two chains that are kind of front of mind on the timeline.
I like it. We were literally just talking the other day. In fact, that's a nice segue into one of the topics for conversation today, which is like, let's take account of some of these airdrops that's been happening and what are our eyes moving towards. You've mentioned abstract and bearer. Bearer's not really been on my horizon as much, although I know it probably should be. But let's kind of transition into that conversation anyway, because I received the Eigenlayer airdrop yesterday, and I had some thoughts to share, maybe some context to share. Had a few questions around this post, and I thought I might just go through them to give people some context on how I've been going around managing this treasury and just thinking about allocating capital. Just before we do that, just a reminder, friends, that we are doing a Deeple, DK Motion Deeple whitelist giveaway today in the show live on YouTube. You have to be a YouTube subscriber, so head to YouTube via the Modern Market account and leave a comment, which is your Twitter handle, if you would like to participate. So getting into this tweet, which I shared yesterday, a couple of interesting things here. So this is, I set this target like maybe back in 2023 to do more than $100,000, 6 figures in airdrops. And I think that, it went very past that quite quickly. I think maybe in February or March, it had already gone past that. Eigenlayer yesterday finally became transferable. We spoke about the significance of that token. That's trading at almost a $7 billion FDV. That added around $9,000 to this portfolio that I have. But I guess some of the things people are wondering is always like, well, okay, how much are you putting in? How long are you putting in? How does this actually work? And I don't think I'll be able to break down everything in this particular segment, but maybe just a few thoughts before we maybe do other segments on this. I think there's probably something between 200 to 300K of working capital here. And someone asked in the comments, Idara asked in the comments, I'm a noob and I'm curious here. Did you farm these? What do you mean by 200 to 300K working capital? I don't know if that's the technical term for working capital, but what I mean by that is it's the amount of capital that is put into various protocols. That might mean that a certain proportion of that is put into EtherFi, and then you just wait a few months. Then a certain proportion of that is put into Blast, and then you wait a few months. And maybe then you take that out of Blast and you put it somewhere else. So that's what I mean by working capital. I think that's a pretty significant return based on that rough working capital, because the thing is you can move that around over time as well, right? You can put it in Athena for maybe 2 months. If you know that that's where it needs to be for a particular time, then you can take that out and put that into Blast, or you can take that out and put that into wherever. So I will do some more content on that because I think there were a bunch of questions on it as well. For example, Wenzel asked, do these prices reflect the real USD value you've received, meaning that you always insta-sell your airdrop? This question, I love this question because this has happened to me 2 times when I post this type of thing. People always ask, like, is that the real value? And my answer to that is yes, it is the real value, because unless it's a very, very special situation, I just sell for the money. Like, why do I do that? It's not because I'm bearish on a particular thing. It might be the case, but it's not necessarily that. In the majority of cases, it's just that I don't want to hold a portfolio of airdropped tokens and then have to manage them and decide whether I'm bullish or bearish on those things. The reason why I've allocated is to participate, to think, because I think that particular protocol is good. And then I probably want to move back into ETH or stable coins. And 9 times out of 10, I just go straight into stable coins for this stuff. So yes, it is the real USD value. A couple of other questions I had. Non-fungible asked, you ate on EtherFi, i.e. EtherFi was a very, very significant win. What caused that? And in that particular instance, sometimes I was an ambassador. So I think there was like a bit of a bonus there, and referrals. So I think sometimes the amount that you refer is pretty significant when it comes to determining your allocation of these things. However, you can never know that in advance, right? So that's not something you can always plan for. That's just something which you have to kind of manage as you kind of go through things. So this was a good comment. I don't think airdrop yield is going to be as good as Q1 2024, but who knows? Hope you're all right. What are you looking at right now? So this is coming full circle back to Sam's point, which was he's looking at Berachain and maybe Abstract. I said you simply never know in this game, but you have to stay in. That's the thing for me. Okay, it's not going to be as good as Q1 2024. How do we know? We don't know anything. We say that at the top of the show over and over again. We just don't know. You want to be in the game though, right? So I'm personally eyeing up Blast, Abstract, Athena integrations. I still think they're doing an awesome job of integrating that particular synthetic dollar across the crypto ecosystem. And there's actually ways to double up there, because you can hold Athena, they have an incentive program, and then you can park that Athena in other places which might also have an incentive program. Symbiotic as an alternative to Eigenlayer now. Remember, they're backed by Lido. So that's an alternative restaking protocol. And then, do you know what? I kind of like NFT lending. You can get around 10% on a Pudgy Penguin at 50% loan to value. I kind of like that for having some ETH parked somewhere. I feel like that's relatively risk off, earning 10% on a reasonable amount of ETH. So those are the various options that I've been thinking about. I'd be curious when we see, I'll take more questions on that. And as we build out some type of strategy to produce more routine content on it, we will try to integrate that into the broader conversation. So that's a little segment for me. Any questions, comments, Legendary, Sam, on this before we move into the bigger discussion point today?
Yeah, I think I've probably just got another point to add to that, just in terms of if you have the capital, that's one thing. But I do think we've touched on this previously, especially with the Blast drop farming kind of regime that we went through. The time is the other thing. So I look at your list of different protocols on there. For instance, Parcel, like you took a more passive approach, which wasn't time incentive, but as a result, the amount that you received was a lot less than what I received, because I was doing the leverage trading on the real estate indices based on different geographical locations. So it just depends. Like if you want to dedicate time, you might have to actively monitor that capital and making sure that you aren't kind of taking those unnecessary risks. But it would take more of your time to be able to do that. So it just depends. Like you can probably farm some of these protocols with a lot less capital more efficiently. But if you have other commitments outside of that, it then becomes very difficult to do that.
Great point. I often optimize for the lazier option because I feel, well, that's just my personal choice. But as you say, there are sometimes options within protocols. So for Parcel, that was a great example. It's like, look, you've got the lazy option, you'll get a bit less. You've got the more hands option if you want to do a bit more, and you'll probably get a bit more as well. So even within opportunities, you can kind of choose your path. And that's why I think it's a bit lazy when people say, I don't have time to allocate anything, or I don't have any time to allocate to any of this airdrop participation thing. Really, it's not even airdrops. It's just, where do you allocate for yield? I think that's the better way to think about it in 2024. Should you park your ETH and just stake it and earn 3%? Should you lend against a Pudgy Penguin and get 8% at 50% loan to value? Or should you park it in Symbiotic and maybe you run the maths and you think you're going to get a 10% a APY, but only in 6 months? So like, these are the kinds of questions you need to ask yourself when you're thinking about this stuff. But we will do more content on that. I think people find it interesting. So we'll circle back on that at some point in time soon. Legendary, let's move into the next conversation, because this was a really fun conversation where you got replied to by Vitalik himself. Why don't you set this up, explain what happened, explain what some of the key takes were, and what your learnings were from this conversation about some of the more controversial aspects of Polymarket.
Yeah, absolutely. I had this post, was it 2 days ago, on Polymarket that did go viral, got a couple hundred, got 200K impressions, where I was saying it feels wrong that Polymarket has an entire Hezbollah betting section that makes a war look like a football game to bet on, which did spark quite the discussion, and got some very good replies. So obviously the context on that is, as we also have the first main headline, that the situation in the Middle East is further escalating, and there's a wide array of bets that you can place on Polymarket, ranging from when Israeli forces will enter Lebanon to the US evacuating Beirut embassy, by what time, to when we'll see Iran striking on Israel. Will that happen before November or not? Obviously happened yesterday. So that did get quite some interesting replies and counter takes. I want to point out a couple of them. One of them was from Kix, who was saying that basically, if you invest in the S&P 500, you also invest in companies who build missiles that Israel has been using, and making the point that you can also view it as a kind of a hedge. If you compare that with, if you create another situation with a hurricane and there's a betting market on that, you might be affected, but you don't have insurance for that because it's so expensive. You could basically just bet on that. I personally don't think that this really works out, because if there's a high percentage, a high chance that the hurricane will happen, the bet will already be up at, say, 80, 90 cents, and you can maybe gain another 10, 20%. So you'd need a shit ton of capital. If your home is 500K a mil and you make 20%, you want to cover your home, you would still need to bet a couple million on that to even be able to cover that. Tyler made the point that basically he sees it as a news aggregator, and to him it's more about, it saves time. You don't need to read all the news, and you just know what the aggregated media is basically, at what conclusion it is arriving. Is this more likely? Is this more unlikely? And then Vitalik got into this conversation as well, saying, sharing this on screen, that he supports those markets existing. The point of Polymarket is that from the perspective of traders, it is a betting site, but from the perspective of viewers, it's a news site. There are all kinds of people, including elites on X, on the internet, making harmful and inaccurate predictions about conflicts, and being able to go and see if people with actual skin in the game think that something has a 2% chance or a 50% chance. It's a valuable feature that can help keep people sane. And to him, it's not about making money from bad stuff happening. Some people were asking in the comments where he's drawing the line on that, and he was very clear about that. To him, it is assassination markets, which Augur, which is a prediction market that has existed for years, very clearly said from the beginning that they instructed the oracles to not vote valid on assassination markets, because this creates a behavior, this creates a potential incentive for someone to assassinate. Obviously, someone, when there's a betting market, and place a bet accordingly on that. This is where Vitalik is drawing the line on that. And we had this conversation a month ago or so on the show, where I was saying this could be a new form of warfare, basically, where Clemente was jokingly posting, when there was the bet on Polymarket, when the first Mpox case will be reported in the States, that someone, because he at the time was traveling in Africa, could basically make a huge bet, contract the disease, and try to fly back in the States and make that work. And if someone could create a bet to create a negative incentive for a country that they don't like, that would be a new form to conduct warfare. I found it was a super interesting discussion in the comments, to be honest. I think that some of the points, maybe that's my concluding point on that, are a bit more idealistic, because
in what sense?
In the sense that the skin in the game, Like if you look at Eigenlayer, for example, we talked about it yesterday. Let's use a non-military example for once.
Yeah.
The market was thinking 50, 60% it's happening in September, the airdrop. Then Eigenlayer said, oh, we're going to delay that. Obviously, the odds base. Then everyone was at first thinking it's really going to happen in September. Odds shot up to 90%. Then Eigenlayer was, nope, we're going to launch in the first minutes in October. Odds down to 0. Then they did launch system, but odds back up to 100%. So if you looked at that market before the token launched and you were looking at the 60, 70% chance, you couldn't really derive any info from that. Plus, if you go back to the military market, some of the markets are so small because people are making the point that, you can create a panic on the internet. If you have bots, a bot farm, if you go viral with claims that are inaccurate, and people would look to Polymarket to find sanity, that's not accurate in a market that has maybe a 20K bet. Because if I want to create a panic and I'm running a bot farm, which in itself is costly, I could use that money to go to Polymarket and make a large bet that, yes, this invasion will happen in whatever country, despite that not really being the case, to manipulate that betting market, which would probably cost less time and money than trying to create a panic on X if people would really reference that as the source of truth. So this is why I'm saying that Polymarket is too slow for too little, not too slow. Sorry, it's too little for that to really be the sane source on truth on those bets who don't have large enough betting size. Like if you look at the presidential elections, there's hundreds and millions in there. Fair, I take that point. That gives you a very good view. And that's also a vote that people can influence. Like you can bet on that, and you can, have an influence as an American, at least, on the presidential election by voting. But you can't really have an influence, most of us at least, on when Iran's going to attack Israel. So the only thing that happens is you read the news on X or on other newspapers, you form your opinion and vote on that. That kind of goes back to Tyler's point that ultimately it becomes like a source of aggregated news, but not an absolute source of truth, because that would actually need insiders who have who have more information on that to be betting. And that's my final point, because I've been going on for a while now. Is a point that Bo, who's a former CIA analyst, has made. But actually, that creates a situation where potentially someone who has insider information, who's working with an agency, could vote, and then could bet on Polymarket, and by doing so, inform another party, say Israel isn't thinking that Iran's attacking, and then there's suddenly a massive bet on Polymarket that an attack is going to happen. Then it basically would tip them off. So that was one of the concerns that Bo has expressed.
So thanks so much for that summary. It's really, really helpful, super interesting. Sam, I know you have an additional point to make. I'll come to you in just a second. That final point was the thing that really clicked for me when you shared that with me off camera yesterday, where essentially the assumption that the money always gets placed on the winning thing is incorrect in circumstances which in circumstances where the outcome, there's some kind of value attached to the secrecy of that outcome. And I think that's accurate. So in circumstances where the revelation of an attack or anything is material to the people who would be on the receiving end, it's basically not in the people's interest to bet. So it's like you can choose. You can either win some money or you can lose the thing which you're actually trying to do, because it would be in no way in your interest to inform the other people by increasing the odds of that particular event happening. So that's an interesting quirk, and I just think people need to think through those ideas a little bit more. Sam, I know you've got an additional point on this. We want to get to the main headlines as well today. Obviously, crypto price action has been crazy. We want to get to that in a second, but I know you've got one more thing to say on this.
Well, just on the point around that you just made there, I think that the wisdom of crowds is the main point around data aggregation, because obviously if you've got all this publicly available information, no one individual can go through all that information and form a view. Whereas if you think about the collective, probably on average, people have probably gauged all that information that's available to the public. and then formed a decision based on putting the weight behind it in terms of betting slips and whatever. But yeah, I agree to your point. If there's stuff that's not yet available around on specific markets, then in terms of information, then that might not be an accurate reflection. And I use the example of what Bloomberg did with integrating a data feed specifically on the presidential election. They haven't done it with any other markets because they don't have the liquidity and the volume to justify it and make it like a viable, accurate news source. So I think from that point, that makes sense. And I like the point that Legendary made around the insurance, because I've seen that with like the agricultural industry, that they're heavily reliant on weather. And if weather goes against them, placing bets on the likes of Polymarket could effectively act as a way of hedging, so a form of insurance, just to kind of go against that. So if they have like a bad crop, at least they've covered themselves through a various like kind of structured financial product.
Okay. Very, very interesting stuff. Great summary from Legendary. Interesting thoughts from Sam as well. Well, these prediction markets are clearly very, very interesting to people, and they're proliferating. So we will continue to cover them as we find them interesting and discuss some of those more complex issues with respect to them as we go on. But let's move on to the main headline for today, which is, of course, majors drop on the Iran attack on Israel. Just to give you some headline numbers of what is going on, we have, let me share my screen for people who are watching in. Remember, we're live on X, we're live on YouTube video and X video. We're doing a giveaway on YouTube video if you're just joining as well. Make sure you stick around for that. We've got Bitcoin that's down almost 4% to 61.3K. ETH is down 6% to 2.4. Solana's down 6% to $146. Interestingly, this thing where crypto goes down relatively big and then memes don't respond that much worse is super fascinating to me at the moment. I just feel like this was not something that used to happen as much before, but is an increasing trend where on a day where Bitcoin is down 5%, ETH is down 6, Solana is down 6, you have Dogecoin down no more than 9, Pepe and WIF are down a bit more, 14 and 10% respectively. Popcat is down 4%, for example. That's as much, that's less than Bitcoin. So Popcat holders are just so unconcerned about what is going on, or as unconcerned as Bitcoin holders, which is just historically not what has happened. You've got Book of Meme down 14%, Nero down 14%. So look, maybe some of these down a little bit more now, edging into double figures, the majority. It's just not as big a difference as what I have expected here. Sam, interested to hear your thoughts here. Like, am I making this up? Am I noticing that these memes are not going down as much as I would have expected before? That's kind of what I'm feeling. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I mean, I noticed it specifically on Mudang and Fwog. So Fwog has jumped above 100 million market cap, and Mudang dipped down to about just below 200 mil, and it's back up to around about 230 now. And I do wonder whether it's the people that are participating in this market are kind of in their own little bubbles or silos. So they kind of see stuff going on, but ultimately I feel like it's a little bit detached, and that's just the general sense that I get. So whether people are just on the timeline focusing on those things in their own little bubbles, just away from the macro stuff, maybe they don't understand the significance of what war can do to everything, all these risk on assets. But yeah, it's certainly an interesting one. It's a phenomenon that I can't get my head around, to be honest.
I have a hypothesis on that.
Go on.
We had the report yesterday by BlackRock, where we also looked into the geopolitical conflicts and how basically on a 60-day basis, BTC is doing way better than the S&P 500 and then gold after COVID, after an invasion. But on a one-day basis, the tendency is that BTC tends to crash the strongest. And that has happened a couple of times already. And probably someone is observing that pattern and just wants to trade that. It just seems that we arrived to the conclusion that BTC is dumping on an invasion, on military action, on pandemics, etc. Dump that in the short term and basically buy that dip and sell it off after it has recovered. And I do think that there's bigger players who are doing that. And for that, you need something with a bigger market cap, and BTC is the perfect cryptocurrency for that. And in the memes where there's way less liquidity, what's the liquidity in Modern currently around 5 mil? You simply cannot do that. And it's just a different structure for the traders who are not trying to swing trade geopolitical conflicts, and they're just happy to hold throughout and be like, yeah, whatever, that's not impacting our market. So I just think this is a pattern that we see maybe playing out with the majors, but it just doesn't work because of liquidity meme coins, and it's a different strata of traders who don't want to perform the same swing trades as some of the traders who do that for majors.
Interesting. So it's, I mean, that's kind of an argument that the people in memes are longer term, because
the actual long-term investors,
because you know that the liquidity is less, you've obviously made a conscious decision to participate. Whereas, you know, when Bitcoin, if you come in and out, like you can come in and out relatively quickly, and you can move on these kind of big announcements. Interesting thought. Funky, your hand is raised, our resident Bitcoin bull. Welcome to the stage, my friend. What are your thoughts on the majors being down on this major news coming out of the Middle East, and the meme performance in comparison with it?
GM fam, yeah, no, I was going to say just a couple things. I'm not surprised about the majors movement, right? This is just what we should expect. But I dropped this in the Modern Market Discord yesterday, and I just put it in the comments below. I think everything we're circling around is touched on this guy, Murad, who did like a 21-minute talk at Token 2049 about memes and culture. I'm a religious studies major by training at university, and he likens memes to religion. It is an amazing... No. I mean, it sounds funny, but it's an amazing thesis. Watch that video, because I think it perfectly explains why we don't see the movement in the memes, because these people are in it as a sense of community, as a sense of solidarity. That's one of the 4 pillars of like how religion functionally works, is community. It's the 4th main pillar. Like, there are just so many things he points out in this talk. I would highly urge anybody, I just dropped in the comments, if you have 21 minutes to spare, watch this guy's thing. I'm actually probably going to actually get some more meme coins, because now just really thinking it through this lens, it's really quite fascinating. They're cults, plain and simple, and people don't sell because they're just hanging on for the upside. They're hanging on for that life-changing wealth. Just the whole 21 minutes is excellent. I'll just leave it at that. Everybody should watch it.
Absolutely converted. #1 missionary. Funky, great stuff. I've actually seen a lot of people posting about it. I haven't watched the video myself yet, so thank you very much for sharing it. We will take a look, and I can corroborate that, yes, lots of people have been talking about that video, so I think it's worth checking out to see what other people are being fed about memes. If you are even yourself a little bit skeptical, you might as well understand the psychology of what's going on behind it. So I think that'll be very interesting to watch. Let's keep it moving to the second headline for today. Before we get there, just a reminder, we are giving away 1 Deeple whitelist spot for tomorrow. Remember, we had Deeple on the show yesterday, DK on the show yesterday. He's dropping Deeple, his latest piece, I think tomorrow. So we've got to get this whitelist to someone later today. The way to do that is to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can get it through the Modern Market Twitter account. And then you need to leave your Twitter handle in the comments. We've got a bunch already. We'll probably scroll it after the show and then be in touch with the winner. So do that if you want to participate in the latest DK drop. Highly, highly anticipated. Let's get into the second headline first, though. Sam, we've got the Bitwise XRP news. Do you want to just give us a bit of a summary here on what's going on?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, Bitwise, they made an XRP ETF filing. So in the state of Delaware, I think that's kind of the high level thing. I think that, I mean, XRP, we know it's like the 7th largest crypto token. They've had a massive legal case was kind of settled last year. Well, not settled, but the verdict was that, I mean, it was a partial win for XRP, which is kind of where the gray area lies, because it was deemed that the XRP wasn't selling, or Ripple wasn't selling unregistered securities to retail investors, but it was from the institutional side. And I think for me, just forming my view around this, I think that the ETFs have been filed. I do think there probably will be some back and forth. I don't think that's going to be something that's going to be clarified anytime soon, because obviously if you've got a previous case with the precedents around unregistered securities being sold to institutions, the ETF kind of falls under that same umbrella. So I think there's probably going to have to be a lot of work done to that just to kind of get that across the line. And I think the interesting point around that, I don't know anyone really that holds XRP unless they're kind of more from the TradFi side. Like, well, yeah, but like you're ex-TradFi, so you probably hold it because, yeah, it's, I don't know. I think like, to me, it's just interesting. It's kind of like the payment rail kind of thing. Institutions know it. So maybe that's why it's kind of gone for the ETF route, because I mean, most of the people that are going to be deploying into those financial products are probably going to be the institutions. So,
yeah, I think that's fair. You're right. I don't know that many people who hold XRP, but it does seem to be like a more institutionally positioned chain. Great summary. I think that's helpful. That's just helpful to be aware of. I think that is big news, given that there aren't that many ETFs that get filings that are made. So if there is one, it's interesting to observe and see. So we'll keep an eye on that. Let's hit the Web3 roundup to get you up to speed with everything else that's been happening in the space in the last 24 hours, and then we'll get into our final headline. So we have the Web3 roundup coming from the snapshot, which is pinned up top. Berachain NFT ecosystem does more than 200 ETH in volume in the last 24 hours. That's pretty insane. Obviously related to the Berachain ecosystem, and I guess related to some perceived airdrop of tokens that will come at some point in time. No other good reason why this bear that we are seeing, watching on screen, wielding two guns, kind of suspended with some rope from the air, should be worth 60 ETH. Next, Coinbase adds DGen, which jumps 111% on listing to $162 million market cap, $355 million FTV. Very interesting to see listings having their intended effect. Sometimes listings are often the top and tokens dump after them. Seems like this one literally doubled. Remember, DGen is that coin on Farcaster, the Web3 social network that was getting distributed to its users. So a little bit of life there still, it seems. Binance opens in Argentina to mark its 20th global regulatory place. Merch launched tech-enabled hoodies with seed phrase, Swarovski and Claire Silver. Interesting collaboration between prominent collectors, artists, and IRL brands on the kind of physical side. Some more art stuff. Rafiq Anadol announces the world's first AI art institution scheduled for 2025. This is going to be in LA. That seems pretty exciting. Slave by Xcopy originates a $210,000 loan on Gondi. These Xcopy loans have been getting bigger and bigger, Gondi being the house for many of them. Proud that Gondi is partnered with us for the next quarter. So awesome for them. And finally, Deeple announces the first ever solo museum show in the Deji Museum in Nanjing, China. That's pretty interesting to see on the art side. So that's everything from the Web3 roundup to get you up to speed with everything else that's been happening in the space in the past 24 hours. The final headline for today was to do with Fantasy Top. Again, leaning into the prediction conversation once again. This news was about how their new game called Presidential Tactics has been launched. They say for the first time, you can place bets on the X performance of your favorite political figures by choosing your side, Democrats or Republicans, and the leading personalities within. This tactic is available in both free and paid models, and you can compete for a share of over $44,000 in prize pools. Just a little bit of extra information. Introducing the presidential tactic, where you can bet on the performance of your favorite political figures. Begin by choosing your side. You either choose Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, and once you've made your choice, you'll be matched with Democrat or Republican figures to finalize your tactic. And they give a list of other prominent Democrats and Republicans that I guess you get paired up with. So you've got Kamala Harris, AOC, Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi. Then you've got Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, Ron DeSantis, and Speaker McCarthy, who is Kevin McCarthy. So interesting Interesting game here. Fantasy Top really seemed to have nailed this concept of branching outside of crypto Twitter and figuring out what gets people going and figuring out how they can play on their social metrics. Sam, I know you were playing this a reasonable amount back in the day. What do you think about this update from a business perspective for Fantasy Top?
Yeah, I mean they found product market fit within their own niche bubble, and I've been monitoring it to see how they kind of break out of that into the next phase, and whether there's been discussions of kind of going for the more broader influencer market, but I like this angle. I know they partnered with Predict recently, so whether there'll be some sort of further integration there with like effectively placing bets on that specifically, because I know that they Predict enabled you to bet on people that are playing Fantasy Tops, the actual players. So you're betting on people betting to win. It's just, it gets a little bit convoluted. But I do wonder whether there'll be something similar for this presidential stuff. And actually, I quite like the fact that some of these Blast apps, Blast native apps, are kind of collaborating now to try and lift all tides, or lift all boats. Sorry. So I think that to me is quite interesting. So I've just been monitoring that. I don't know what that means for user attention, whether people will start pivoting away from the KOL specifically on the timeline, and whether those cards will depreciate in value as you kind of like grow out further. So that's something that I'm monitoring as well, because obviously you've got this core strong community base that this was kind of built around. So I'll be interested to see how they continue to kind of push out to a wider community.
Interesting. Yeah, I think they've definitely found product market fit in that respect. Legendary, do you have any thoughts here?
Very much agree with what Sammy has been saying. I know that also Brad had his hand up before, who's in the X Spaces with us. So just want to throw it to him, Brad, to hear from you.
Yeah, can you actually hear me?
Yeah, works well.
Yeah, we got you.
Oh, sick. All right, cool. Yeah, sorry, dudes. My internet's been dog shit in Taiwan. Typhoon coming in. Things happen. Yeah,
Typhoon, we forgive you.
Yeah, I tried. So I looked over this, and there's two modes. Yes, there's free and there's paid. The free mode can actually be joined now. So if you guys actually just want to go and like throw your hat in a ring and see how this stuff's being played, you can actually go to that now. It's pretty funny. And then this tournament, they said 7,000 gold is being distributed. It made me think of like, man, how much is that? Because I hadn't looked at the Blast price in so long, and I remember us talking like $1 to $10 figures on Blast Gold. It's for $70. Like that's ridiculous. So that's just kind of a funny side note. But yeah, like I think it's a good move, and it'll bring a lot of freshness to the ecosystem. Not only just this thing, because like, yeah, doing it for presidential thing, that's a short-term thing, whatever, but it also shows what they can do going forward, right? Like the model itself. So you can envision the future where like, yeah, you can start doing this against L2 accounts, like, base versus Arbitrum, or you can do NFTs versus DeFi accounts, or you could do Solana accounts versus Ethereum accounts, or like all this stuff. And like, that's good for them just to try to stay fresh and stay relevant, because yeah, like that's obviously needed in our space.
I love it. I think that's the correct point, in the sense that it's not about the presidential thing, which, as you say, is only going to be around for the next 2 months. It's the principle. It's when two groups of people are squaring off, how can you pit them against each other and create a competition around it? It reminded me on a very different direction. I think I saw at the Permissionless conference, they're going for like a more active focus this year, and they've set up these paddle courts. I don't know if it was pickleball or paddle. I know there's that difference between the States and Europe at the moment. And they're doing exactly what you just described, Brett. I'm pretty sure, I might be making this up, or maybe I thought that this was something that would be good that they do, but I think they're doing this. They said they're going to be doing like L2 versus L2, like crypto media company versus crypto media company. So I think that's a great idea in principle, and I'm sure the principle there is what Fantasy Top can take away and add on top of, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Like it just keeps things fresh, right? The model can stay same. We're always going to have two people fighting against each other, whether it's meme coins or broadcasting companies, whatever you said, just like you did. So like, yeah, it's just something that can be run pretty consistently and keep everyone entertained.
Love it. Okay, good stuff. So guys, that's bringing us to the close of the show today. Obviously, we hit the usual price action headlines as always. Remember, we do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour. And today we are going to be giving away one whitelist spot for the Deeple piece by DK. We had DK on the show yesterday. If you didn't know, it was a great interview. One of the first interviews of many that we'll be doing with some of the top artists coming out of the Shape ecosystem who will be minting on Shape. You will be very, very not surprised because of the caliber of DK coming on yesterday, but the artist for next week, it's pretty huge, pretty huge. I don't know in what capacity we'll be doing the interview, but it's pretty big. So very, very excited for that. Remember, the final thing that you need to do if you would want to be considered for the whitelist spot that we have to give away for Deeple, make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Shout out to Funky for doing some quick maths for us. We are at 480, just refreshing, 481 subscribers. We need to get to 500, guys, whether that's today, whether that's another day, but well, frankly, we need to get to 1,000 ASAP. But we're at 481 at the moment. That's a good chunk more than where we were before the start of the show. Thank you for subscribing. If you just subscribed today, but if you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribed. And in order to participate in the giveaway, just leave your Twitter handle in the comments. We will review them at the end of the show today and get back to someone during the next set of hours. We're going to have to review and check everything. So just a reminder, subscribe to the channel and leave your Twitter handle in the YouTube comments. We will be closing in 2 minutes. So you have 2 more minutes to do that if you're watching elsewhere. Legendary, any final thoughts, reflections on today's show / the partnership with Shape or anything else?
I like that the YouTube fam is obviously way more active today because everyone is sharing their handle. But I always love the discussions on YouTube. They make me chuckle throughout the show. We had some very interesting points that we didn't manage to touch on. Overarch, for example, was saying that he listened to, I think it was an Arthur Haynes podcast where he was saying that there is a Polymarket, basically alternative or chain in the works where the betting resolution will be done by AI. So you don't need any human to do that. You don't need that whole manual appeal process. And someone else was making the comment that then basically becomes a market of humans betting against an AI, which is quite fun. And I really enjoy when we have this discussion, this commentary throughout the show, this valuable context that we get on YouTube.
Yeah, one of my favorite things is when we do like the live research where something's happened and we're kind of figuring it out as we go live, and it's amazing to be able to have an intelligent resource that is kind of either supporting, providing conflicting information, supportive information, but just like being a part of the conversation as we're having it. And I think, we do say this at the top of the show, we're not going to get every single thing right every single time, but we will do our best to provide the best information to our knowledge with our capability at that point in time. So we hope you enjoyed. As always, we do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour. We're live on X video, and YouTube. You can catch up with us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts too, if you prefer to catch up over there. Thank you so much for subscribing today, if you subscribed already, but also thank you to the subscribers who've been with us for much longer, because we can't forget about you too. Thank you so much. We will come back to you with the winner of the Deeple whitelist later today, and we'll announce it on the show tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Take care, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.